what I'd like to kind of dive into a little bit today is the philosophy behind being nature aware, which is actually one of the most important things we can talk about at this point in human history. Being nature aware isn't some feel good philosophy, it's generally common sense. But the common sense part of being nature aware has to be expanded upon. So, in the beginning of this, I'd like to kind of look at the situation as we live on one planet, and that planet has a very thin layer of atmosphere that sustains us, that keeps us alive. And within that atmosphere is a lot of life. 8 billion human beings, you've got billions upon billions of animals and plant life and just this amazing um, systems of habitats, ecosystems, biodiversity, and these things are all kind of uh, interdependent. They all rely on one another, and at this point, things are starting to break down a little bit. I know people get upset when they think about concepts like global climate change or biodiversity loss, extinction, and all these scary words. So we're not really going to dive too deep into that part of it. Let's talk about ourselves. Uh, okay, nature aware basically is just understanding your place in the world. And right now, I have a very strong focus on urban ecology, and for good reason. I live in East Jakarta, so my part of Jakarta has more than 4 million people, and the greater Jakarta area has about 25 million people. And within that very urban area are animals and plant life and people that coexist and, like I said earlier, have an interdependence on each other. And sometimes it doesn't go very well. A lot of my videos that I do on my channel are about the long-tailed macaques that live in North Jakarta, and monkeys have right now, a very polarizing position in the world when you think about urban monkeys, urban wildlife, but especially urban macaques. And people always think about conflict. They think about things that are not working for people or for monkeys. So nature aware is a part of that, is to understand that we are a being that exists in an environment that right now is changed by the presence of people. So the Anthropocene, when we talk about a term like that, just means the time of man, and it means more specifically man's impact on the global environment, on the global biosphere. And for me, as an urban ecologist, looking at that, I understand it on different levels. So you're talking about things from clean drinking water, uh, raw sewage, the things that go into the aqua filters. This location that I'm in, by the way, what's behind me is a water reclamation park. I want to show that real quick. So even in East Jakarta, which isn't a high income area, kind of middle class but older neighborhood Jakarta, they dedicated themselves years ago to creating a sump for floodwaters, not just to divert it, but to store it and to preserve it so that that fresh water doesn't just go to waste. And this entire park is built on an aquifer system, and these little things, people think they're headstones. They're not headstones. They actually talk about the water system down here in Indonesian language, Bahasa Indonesia. And basically, it states that on this spot in 2021, they completed work on that part of the aquifer for this park. And they built the park on top of it in a way that water will always permeate down through and get into the ground and end up in these aquifer sumps that can be used later. And it also prevents flooding, which is great because I live in this neighborhood. This is my home. So that's an important part. And it's a key to what I'm talking about when I talk about being nature aware, is living in our own environment. So I lived for many years in the country of my birth, which is Germany. And then I became a citizen of the United States later and spent about 30 years there. I'm 54 years old. And yeah, it's different everywhere you go, but there are some things that are inherently the same. In all situations, we have a part to play in our environment, whether it's urban or not. Rural environments, skyscraper, it doesn't matter. You're still surrounded by natural elements, and you might not be aware of all that. Sometimes we take it for granted. The birds that are flying around, the squirrels, the frogs, the snakes, whatever. In this park alone, we have amphibians, reptiles, small mammals, lots of birds, lots of vegetation. These trees that I'm walking under right now, they're mangoes. It's a mango tree, and there are plenty of mangoes up here. In other places around the park, there are other fruit trees and flowers and different things. So the pollinators come here, and in East Jakarta, one of the main pollinators during the daytime are the different butterflies. Absolutely gorgeous, and I'll be doing a video soon about the butterflies that fly around here. And at night, and I've already covered this. I have videos filming the fruit bats, which are actually the nocturnal pollinators and seed dispersers for these trees. So, in that sense, we're all part of this massive and very dynamic ecosystem. Becoming nature aware and being nature aware are two different things. To become nature aware, you just simply need to take a moment and go, okay, I'm committing to figure out a little bit more about my place in the world. What am I as a being, and what do I exist in? Um, if you want to get really technical, your body is a vessel for billions of life forms. I mean, you're walking around with a ton of life on you and in you. There's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that, whether you realize it or not. On the other side, if you're talking about things that are separate from your body, and you look at things that we consider to be vermin, the cockroaches, rats, whatever, but they're also part of the ecosystem. And they do play an important part, even though they can become carriers of disease or something that we don't want to have in our homes. Managing that is part of being nature aware and thinking about it. So this isn't virtue signaling. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of people that go out and say, you can't be an animal conservationist if you're not a vegan, or they say, if you call the exterminator, you're a bad person or whatever. That's not wholly true. I mean, there are elements of things that you control in your life that you could probably have less impact on your personal space, your environment, or the ecosystem you live in. But that's not what nature aware strictly is about. It's about the philosophy of thinking about these things so that you understand better your place. When you talk about, and I get a lot of people who tell me, I shouldn't advocate so much for the wild long-tailed macaques because uh, they're just like dogs and cats, and people who own dogs and cats, they obviously don't live in a place where I live. So I'm going to walk up on a cat. It's not a pet. It's a stray cat that's part of a semi-feral colony. I say semi-feral because they're not aggressive and they're not openly hostile to people, but they are very aloof. And these strays live in our neighborhood by the thousands. Hello, kuching. Selamat pagi. He said, good morning back to me, I think. I don't speak stray cat. But they're part of that ecosystem too. And again, being nature aware is just understanding that there is always going to be some element of what we consider to be the natural world around us and with us. And a lot of people always talk about, oh, I want to get back to nature, or they go on a trip and they're like, I'm going to go visit nature, but you don't visit nature. You exist in nature. I exist in nature. Our whole world is nature. Whether it's been affected by the human presence or not, it's still part of nature. Nature is rapidly changing, and the way we live with nature also needs to change to some degree. That's not an opinion. I'm talking about sustainability. I'm talking about survivability. If you want to survive in the age of man, you want to survive the Anthropocene, you're really going to have to start to re-examine how we've been living. And that sounds preachy, but it's not strictly speaking preachy. It's just pragmatic. We have a tendency to like our conveniences and our technologies and all these things. I do. I'm talking to you on a cell phone, but there were things that had to be done that were detrimental to the environment to make the cell phone that I'm talking to you on. So it's a weird balance of trying to figure out how to live better within the world as a human being. We can't sustain just being rampant consumers of everything. We just can't do that. That's about as preachy as I get with this. But NatureWare is not about that part of it. NatureWare starts with you, and it starts with you inside, and you examine what works in your life that you do on a daily basis that doesn't have an adverse impact or very little impact on the world around you. You know, maybe you live somewhere. I lived when I was in the United States. I lived in Florida, and we had lizards. We had these little lizards that lived in the house, and here we have the house gecko, and I love the house geckos. Well, some people hate them. I mean, I remember friends that would say, "Oh, you know, I saw this little lizard and I screamed," or whatever. And it's a shame because the lizard is actually a very helpful housemate to have. A lizard is not going to bring disease into your home, and they're also going to help control the insect population. And then they're just good things to have around. Other animals that don't seem like they're good neighbors are actually very good neighbors. So fruit bats here, you know, people give bats the reputation of being the harbinger of disease, rabies, whatever. And that's true to a certain extent. I think, you know, in certain areas, endemic areas for rabies, a bat can carry, you know, 15% of the population can carry rabies. They're carriers, you know. But that doesn't mean that you're in danger of getting rabies from seeing a bat or being around bats. And just learning to accept that part of nature living closer to you and not being frightened by that is part of being nature aware. And I'm saying hello to everybody. I'm sorry I missed you. I got a lot of people saying hello. Um, I don't want to belabor the point on that, but to a certain degree, again, nature aware is about examining for yourself, not me telling you you should do this, you should do that, but stop and think about what animals do I live near, what animals do I live around, what insects, what plant life, and do I have an effect on them? Do I have a good effect? Do I have a negative effect? Do I have a neutral effect? And if you figure that out, if you figure out your place in your personal habitat, your home, then you can start to develop on that. I got a little buddy coming up to me, speaking of nature. So here's one of the stray cats. And again, they're semi-feral. They don't live inside. They don't really rely on people. The kittens are the most inquisitive because they're kittens, and it's what kittens do. So he's going to come up and he's going to rub on my shins and blah, blah, blah. I don't like to touch them because sometimes they carry fungal infections on their skin. It's very common here. It's a tropical environment. They could have other infections, worms, whatever. So maybe it's just going to hang out for a bit. Okay, little kuching. So while I'm talking, I'll let you guys watch the cat since he's way more interesting than me. Or she. I haven't seen the back yet. So just to recap, being nature aware is understanding your place in the world. And the reason that is important, and I will stress this, it becomes more and more important because we're in a changing world. No matter what you believe in, whatever, the truth is you live in a changing world, and it may become more survival impaired in the future if we're not better stewards of things. And the only things that we can really control from a day-to-day basis is the habitat we live in. Our immediate world is the strongest way to start to overcome these challenges. Bye, Kuching. Okay. So I'm turned back to me because I know you all love to see my beautiful face. That's not true. Thank you for joining me. I hope you check out my channel. A lot of the videos that I take, everything that I film is original to me. I don't reuse anybody's stuff. I highly advocate watching them and reading through the transcript because I'm a scientist and a career journalist, and a lot of what I put out there is strongly factual, and I just appreciate you guys taking the time to look at it. Thank you very much, and take care.